Good evening, everyone.
Galadav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, sorry to make you wait.
It's okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to Tet. It says, כתוב באורחות חיים. It says in אורחות חיים, בשם הרב בעל אשכול. קמחה דחיתה, right? So he says the wheat flour, or sare, or barley flour, דארבין הוא בעד קמחה דדוחן. If you mix it together with flour of millet, or galvonim or alonim, or other types of things, other types of legumes. Mevarech bore minei mezonot. So it's going to be mezonot, the blessing there. Ve'abdin hu pat. If you made bread out of that, hamotzi. It's going to be hamotzi. Ve'shalosh brachot, and also birkat hamazon. K'Rabbi Shmuel, like Rabbi Shmuel, who said, "De'amre kol sheyesh bo mechameshet haminim." So they say whatever you have, that you have the five species there, a mixture with something else. Mevarech bore minei mezonot. It's going to be mezonot. Ad kan. That's the end of it. Lashono's language. V'zed Lashon HaRav David Abudrahim. So this rabbi says, Shem irev be'oto kemach echad mechameshet haminim. If he mixed with that flour some other one of the five species of grains, the flour, ve'asa mimenu pat, and he made bread. Mevarech hamotzi. It's going to be hamotzi. Ve'shalosh berachot and birkat hamazon. So this, resembles like the case of multi-grain bread, which is made out of all kinds of grains. So this is like exactly what we're talking about here. So you have like wheat flour, barley flour, you have also rice and other things mixed up all together. Millet, whatever. So it's going to be hamotzi and birkat hamazon. Why is that? Because since you have in there wheat flour and you're making bread, so even though it's only partially that stuff and not totally, but nevertheless, right, that becomes the dominant ingredient there, and therefore it becomes hamotzi and birkat hamazon. Okay. So let's move on. It says what about if he cooked it in a pot, right? That mixture. Mevorech bore min mazon. It's going to be mezonot. Uvasov min shalosh. And then it's going to be ala michya. V'katav Rabbeinu Yonah. Says Rabbeinu Yonah that dafka sheyesh beoto kemach echad mechameshet dinim haminim. So that's only if you have there one of the five species of grain, flour there. Kadesh yochal mimenu kazait. Tagan b'kedei achilat pras. So it has to be right that you can eat. When you eat a kazait of that bread or whatever, there has to be. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. When you eat like enough for a meal, it has to be at least one kazait of those grains, those five grains. If you have that much, So then it's going to be hamotzi. Even though the wheat flour is a minority, nevertheless. אבל אם אין בו זה השיעור, but if it doesn't have at least this much, בחמש הטעמים, from the five species, אינו מברך לבסוף שלוש ברכות. You're not going to do ברכת המזון, אלא בתחילת מברך המוציא. So what are you going to do? You're going to do המוציא in the beginning, בכיוון שיש בו טעם דגן, because it has the taste of grains, אף על פי שאין בו כזית, even though it doesn't have כזית, דגן of grains, it doesn't have כזית of grains there. כדי אכילת פרס, in the amount that it takes to eat a meal. ובסוף מעין שלוש, in the end we're going to do על המחיה, והוא הדין כשבישלוהו בקדרה, same thing also applies when they cooked it in a pot, שמברך תחילה בורא מיני מזונות, you're going to do first מזונות, אבל לבסוף, but in the end, מברך על בורא נפשות, you're going to do, in the end though, it's going to be בורא נפשות, עד כאן השנו, it's the end of it, okay. Then he goes on, what about chavitza, right? So what is chavitza? Vehu perure lechem. It's basically breadcrumbs, right? So let's see the tour inside to see how he describes this. So it says like this, chavitza. What is chavitza? Vehu perure lechem anidbakim yachad. It's breadcrumbs that are stuck together, right? Alideh marak, by way of, soup. Utrokenin vutarita belechem asui lekotach. And then you have bread also, which is made for this dip, to make a dip out of it. Upata babakistin, and also you have the snack breads, like cake and other things. Cookies. Katabti lamala bilchot seuda. So he says, I wrote above in the laws of seuda, Amar le Abaye, le Rav. Abaye said to Rav Dimi, Birkat Bercha Achat Ben Shalosh, Mahi. Okay, that's already something else. Let's stop there. So what are we saying over here? Just to recap, right? We're talking about breadcrumbs that are, brought together in like a, some kind of a, balls or something, like, matzah balls or something like that. But, matzah balls is not really breadcrumbs. It's more, just flour, basically. Matzah flour, matzah meal. So, so he says, I already wrote what is the halacha for these things in a different place. So in other words, I guess he's not dealing with it here. So we'll just leave it at that. Let's see the Bet Yosef here. So it says Bet Yosef, Katabti lemala b'ilchot seuda. It says, I already wrote this in the laws of seuda, which was in Kuf Samech Het. Right, so we already dealt with this issue. The issue, with the breadcrumbs that are stuck together, what the blessing is for that. And if I'm not mistaken, we said that it's mezonot, right? If I remember correctly. And, unless the crumbs are large, like each one is bigger than a kazait, so then it's going to be hamotzi. That's how we said it, if I remember correctly. So what would be a good example of that? Let's say you have French toast, things like this, which are basically bread, pieces of bread, which are fried in the pan. So that's an example of what we're talking about. Or you could have also, smaller crumbs that are like put together in a ball or something. So those things are going to be mezonot. But if each crumb is larger than a kazait, so then it's going to be hamotzi, like bread. So that's why when it comes to French toast, usually they are bigger than a kazait, the slices of French toast. So therefore, you have to make hamotzi on French toast. Don't think it's mezonot. Don't make that mistake. Okay, it's bread. Okay, so just because you fried it doesn't change what it is. It is what it is. Okay, so that's pretty much what we said there. So we'll see in Shulchan Aruch what he says about that. Amar le'Abaye le'Rav Dimi beracha echad min shalosh maihi. So now we're getting into a different discussion. What is the text of the Alamichya? So, but before we go into this, what I would like to do is just see the Shulchan Aruch in Tet and see what we got there, and we'll go back to that to the text. So it says here the Shulchan Aruch, "Irev kemach dochan b'shad minei kidniot im kemach shel chameshet minei dagan u'bishlo kedera." So what are we talking about? He took right flour of millet and he or other types of legumes, and he mixed it with flour of wheat flour or some other five species flour, right? Of those grains, five grains. And what happened? He mixed them together and he cooked it right in a pot. So what is the blessing for that? Mevarech borei min hamazon. It's going to be mezonot. Ala mechia, and also at the end, you're going to do ala mechia. If he made bread from this kind of thing, as we said, right? This is your multi-grain bread. A lot of people like to eat that stuff. They pay like three times as much, to each his own. What can I tell you? Okay. So anyway, what is it going to be the blessing from multi-grain bread? Hamotzi. So why is that? Because there is some wheat in there or barley or something like that from the five grains. So since you have that, it's going to make it hamotzi. We already said, right, that even applies when, the wheat or the five grains is like a minority. Still, it's going to be hamotzi. ברכת המזון, אני הגעתי לעניין ברכת המזון, ודווקא שיש באותו קמח בחמשת מינים, כדי לשאכל ממנו כזית דגן בכדי אכילת פרס. But it has to be enough, right? That's the only condition that we really need. It has to be enough wheat flour there, or whatever, the five grains, that when you eat the achilat pras, בכדי achilat pras, of this bread, it should have at least one kazait of wheat flour, or the other five grains, at least one kazait. So now the question is, right? What is kedei achilat pras? I have to tell you guys what that is because he doesn't define this here, but it is defined in different places. So achilat pras means this is like your standard meal, like that you have with bread. That's what it means. Um, so there is a machloket between the Rishonim, how much that is, right? According to Rambam, we're talking about three egg sizes. And according to Rashi, it's four. So here also, we go like the more stringent opinion that says it's four. Usually that's what we do. So the truth is it could be also leniency when you say it's four. But anyway, um, the point is, right, whether it's three eggs or four egg sizes, when you eat that much of that bread, it has to have at least one kazait of wheat flour in there. And then it's going to be hamotzi and birkat hamazon, which is not really a lot, right? You're talking about very little kazait, nothing. Okay, good. So, about imen bo ze hashiur, but if he doesn't have at least, that ratio at least, right? מחמשת המינים, from the five species, אינו מברך לבסוף ברכת המזון. You're not going to do ברכת המזון in the end. אלא בתחילה מברך המוציא. So what are you going to do? First time מוציא in the beginning, כיוון שיש בו טעם דגן, because it has a taste of grains. אף על פי שאין בו כזית, even though there's no כזית כדי אכילת פרס, when you eat the meal, בסוף על המחיה, in the end you're going to do על המחיה. ואם בישלו בקדרה, what about if you cooked it in a dish, cooked it in a pot, מברך תחילה בורא מן המזונות, so then it's going to be מזונות in the beginning, and the acharav, in the end, you're going to do bor nefashot. hmm So I'm assuming, right, that when he says you're going to do bor nefashot, in the end, he's talking about when you don't have a kazite of wheat flour or 5 grains flour there. Because otherwise, if you would, really it should be ala mechia, the final blessing. So I'll read this one more time, make sure we got it straight. It says, right, Irev kemach dochan b'shar minei kitniot. What do we do over here? We mixed in flour made from legumes and flour of 5 grains. He cooked it together like that, right? As one. So what's going to be? It's going to be mezonot ala mechia, right? That's exactly what I said, right? It's going to be ala mechia. When you have kazait, but when you don't have a kazait, it's going to be bor nefashot. That's what we said in the end. If he made bread, מברך המוציא ברכת המזון. Then it's going to be המוציא ברכת המזון. דווקא כשיש באותו קמח מחמשת מינים, כדי שיאכל ממנו כזית דגן בכדי אכילת פרס. So as we said, right, the only condition that applies to that is that it has to be a kazite of wheat flour there at least, or the other 5 grains, whatever they may be. But if he doesn't have kazite, so then it's going to be mezonot and alamechi, bor nefashot. And if it's bread, it doesn't have a kazite, it's going to be mezonot, and in the end, you're going to do, what are we going to do in the end? Let's see. Alamichya. Wow. Okay, there you go. So all this, halacha is based on all the theories that we learned of upgrading, downgrading, depending on the right prominence of the food. Right, sometimes we go up, sometimes we go down, depending on the upgrade, downgrade. That's what we're talking about here as well. Same thing. Same concepts apply here as well. Okay, so I guess we'll go to Yud. Now we're done pretty much with this, right? The ala mechia thing. So we're going to the fruits, right? Ala etz. We're going to the fruits. Okay, let's see. Right, but before we go to that, there's one little thing we left out, right? Which is the text of the ala mechia. What is the text? The proper nusach. So here it goes. It says, "Ala חמשת המינים הוא אומר, ברוך אתה השם, אלוקינו מלך העולם, על המחיה ועל הכלכלה, etc., etc., etc. Look in your Sidur and you'll see. בסוף פרק כיצד מברכים. So where is this brought down? In the מסכת ברכות, same thing. מ"ד עמוד א'. כתב סמ"ג, says the סמ"ג, ברוך אתה השם על הארץ ועל המחיה. That's the end of it. That's how you seal it. לשון זה כתב רבנו משה. So it says it was written by רבנו משה. וכן תופס הלכות גדולות. Also הלכות גדולות, writes like that. עיקר לחתום על הארץ ועל המחיה. The main right opinion is that we bless על הארץ ועל המחיה. ולא על המחיה ועל הכלכלה. We don't say על הכלכלה in the end. When we seal it. You don't say it there. And that's how we do it, the Sfarim, that's how we do it. If you look at the Siddur, you'll see that. I'm not sure how the Ashkenazim do it. Maybe we'll get a chance to see in the Ramah. We'll see what happens there. So anyway, it says here, Rabbeinu b'shem Rambam sheyesh shen omrim sheyesh omrim kita Adonai tov mativ. Right. So some don't say this. You're good and does good. V'hu b'perek chet v'nahagu ha'olam lomo. So he says that the custom is now to say that. Some don't say it, but the custom now is to say. And then he moves on, רבנו, שכתב רבנו, וקוראים אותו מעין שלוש, אף על פי שתקנוה מעין ארבע. So he says, we call it like, it's like resembling the three blessings, even though really, it's really corresponding to four, because Birkat HaMazon has four blessings. כן כתב רבנו יונה, that's what it says רבנו יונה, ובנוסחת הריף, כתוב רחם אדוני אלוהינו על ישראל עמך, ויד ירושלים ירח, ויד ציון משכן כבודך. That's the Girsa of the Rif. Pretty close to what we have also, same thing. ובני ירושלים ירח במהרה בימינו. And then this part, right, also, it's pretty close to what we have. ונאכל מפריה, and we're going to eat from its fruit. We're going to be satiated from its good. We're going to bless you, right, in holiness and purity. For you are a God who's good and does good. So that's the custom, he says, to do like the text of the Rambam. בסמ"ג כתוב גם כן ונברך it's also this. In this Mag, it's written in this language also. We will bless you upon it with holiness and purity. Okay? It's all what we have in the Siddur, nothing really major over here. Nothing radical. Pretty much what we have. So he says, right, that, but what about the fruits, right? So there we say ala etz v'al pri etz, on the fruits and all the fruits of the tree. What about on the wine? What do we say? Ala gefen v'al pri gefen, right, like that. On the vine and on the fruit of the vine. Sham beGemara, that's what it says in the Gemara there. All these texts. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Much katab b'shem ri, and now what you wrote the name of the ri. She'en lomar ve'al tenuvat hasedeh. We shouldn't say tenuvat hasedeh. What does that mean, by the way? The growth of the field. Tenuvat hasedeh. Ala perot ve'al yain, on the fruits and on the wine. She'en lashon zeh nofel ela b'minei dagan. So it says this fruit only really matches up with grains and not fruits. כן כתב רבנו יונה, so it says רבנו יונה, שיש אומרים על העץ ועל פרי העץ. Some say this text, ועל תנובת השדה, and the growth of the field, ואין זה נכון, it's not proper, he says to do like that. כי לשון על תנובת השדה, because this language of growth of the field, לא תותקן אלא על ידי חמשת המינים בלבד. So he says that was only made for the five species of grain, this language. עד כאן it's in a bit, אבל מנוסחת הריף, but it says, the text of the riff, ברמב"ם ישנו, that it does appear there. Okay, so yeah, so look in the siddur, right? Again, you see everything there, you'll find it all there. Okay, great. So let's move on. כתב על ספר המצוות, it says there in the ספר המצוות, שיש לומר אחר כי אתה אדוני טוב מטיב לכל. You, right, are good and does good for everybody. ונודה לך על הארץ, and we're going to thank you for on the land. כדי שיהיה מעין חתימה, that should resemble the seal. סמוך לחתימה, or close to the seal. So the close to the seal should seal of the blessing should resemble show the same text as the end of the blessing. Katav od says furthermore, v'yesh omrim de v'nochal mipriya v'nisba mitava. Some say like this: we're going to eat from its fruits and be satiated from its goodness. Then namro shen. You shouldn't say that. It says shen lachamod aretz b'shvil priya. So he says, why is that? You shouldn't say it because we shouldn't desire in the land because it's because of its fruits. That's not the right. That's not the proper perspective. Adoni Avirosa says, but my father, Haya Omro, he would say that. It seems like the reason is Bipneshe Hashaya Mefaresh Shemesha Anu Omrim Nocham Priya. He was explaining that which we say, right, that we're going to eat from its fruits, but Nisba Mituvah, and we're going to be satiated from its goodness. And Atchelet Bishvil Achila. And a Tachlit Bishvil Achila. So he says the end point, right, the end game over there, right, the desired result is not really because of the eating, Ela Masha Omer Achakach, rather it really applies to what it says afterwards. We're going to bless you upon it in holiness and right in purity. Who tachlit? That is that's the end game, the desired result. And ela demishum de bracha atia mipnei achila, but he says because the blessing comes because of the eating. Hu omer v'nochal priya v'nisba mituvah. That's why he says we're going to eat from its fruits and be satiated from its goodness. Okay. Goes on. One more piece. So it says here, Umash katav v'gam lo haya omer v'nodeh lecha. He also wouldn't say this, right? We're going to thank you. Klamar kishim shaya cholek al samad. So I mean to say that just as he was arguing with the samad, kimosh katav she'en lomar v'nochal priya, like he said, we shouldn't say that we don't eat from its fruits. Gam ken haya chaluk al ma b'mash katav she'esh lomar. He also was arguing about what it says, what he said that what he wrote that there is to say, we thank you. He would not say that. But what's the reason for the Rosh? It says, since he says at the end of the towards the end of the seal, we're going to bless you upon it in holiness and purity. Have a shapir, then it says me'en at chatima. So it's going to be like similar to the end of the seal. It's going to have the same text as the seal. So therefore, it fits in well. Okay, a lot of stuff here, but let's see what we got in the Shulchan Aruch. Tet. So it says here, בברכת אחת בין שלוש של פירות דחוץ על הארץ, חותם על הארץ ועל הפירות. One second. Yeah. So what does this mean? That when we say, right, Me'en Shalosh, which is the Alamichya, Um, but he's not really talking here about the alamichia. He's talking more about the fruits. So how do you say that? What's the text there? Al aretz ve'al perot. On the land and on the fruits. That's what we say in the diaspora outside of Israel. U'ba'aretz, b'Eretz Yisrael, but in Eretz Israel, chotem al haaretz ve'al peroteha. We say peroteha. So what does it mean peroteha? Its fruits, right? The fruits of the land of Eretz Israel. So we change it a little bit, the text when it comes to the when we eat in Eretz Israel. Ve'im b'chutz haaretz ochel miperot haaretz. So he says, if in the diaspora he's eating like Israeli fruits, chotem gam ken al peroteh. So then he's also gonna seal right like this peroteh al peroteh on the fruits, its fruits. Right. So we do buy in America some Israeli produce. So we're gonna do it the Israeli way then, if it's Israeli produce. So that's what he's telling you here. For instance, right, if you drink Israeli wine. So then instead of saying ala gefen v'al pri right al aretz v'al pri gefen, you say al aretz v'al pri gafna. Same idea here, you're saying right, its fruits, its vines, its. So what is it's referring to? Eretz Israel. That's the whole idea. So we have one text for outside and one text for inside, but it doesn't go according to where you are. It goes according to what you're eating, right? That's the thing. If you're eating Israeli produce, it's always going to be the same. If you're eating outside produce, it's always going to be the same. That's the bottom line. Okay, great. So what else we got here? That was Yud. Now we got Yud Aleph. Okay, let's move on. If you have any questions, let me know. There's so many details with these things. So a lot of curiosity going on here. So it says the tour, בחוץ לארץ חותמים בפירות על הארץ ועל פירות ובני ישראל ובני ארץ ישראל חותמים על הארץ ועל פירותיה. So as we said, right, outside we do al haaretz ve'al perot, and in the land we do in Eretz Israel we peroteha. And that's pretty much what it is. ושם בגמרא, over there in Gemara, וכתב רבנו יונה, that right, says רבנו יונה there, כשמביאים פירות לחוץ על הארץ, when you bring the fruits of Israel to outside, right, על הספק, מארץ ישראל על הספק, אין צריך לשנות מטבע. So if it's a doubt, you don't have to change the text, right? Leave it the way it is. We read like the diaspora text. If you have a doubt whether it's Israeli or not. but Rashba כתב, מסתמה, שאפילו בחוץ לארץ אין האכיל פירות הבאים מן הארץ. So Rashba says, no, if you're eating right, Israeli fruit outside the land, you're going to do like the Israeli style. And same thing as they do. So why is that? They had by the Svira Le'anan. Is according to what you hold, the Mikra, the Rav Chazda Amar, the beginning that Rav Chazda said, Al Aretz ve'al Perotea, he said on the land and on its fruits, Lo hava kashya lan, it wouldn't have been difficult for us. La inhu achle, rather that they eat the anan mivarchin alma kol echad de achlin anan mivarchin al Perotea. So you see from there, he says that wherever you're eating it, you're gonna do the blessing like the place where you are. I'll read this one more time. I didn't catch it. Okay, one more time. Again, אבל הרשב"א כתב, ומסתברא דאפילו בחוץ לארץ, so he says, it makes sense to say that even outside the land, right, in the diaspora, אכיל פירות הבאים מן הארץ, if you eat fruits which are coming from Eretz Israel, מברך על הארץ ועל פירותיה, you're going to say על פירותיה, its fruits, right, even though you're not really living there, but you're not residing there either, but what it is that you're eating Israeli fruits, and that's what it's all about. So he says, "Teha lemay desvira lan demika de Rav Chazda amar al haaretz ve'al." Because according to that which we held before, that that Rav Chazda said on the land and on its fruits, lo hava kashya lan ela inhu achle. Wouldn't have been difficult for us. Why? Because they eat the anan mevarchin, and we bless alma kol echad de achalin anan mevarchin al peroteha. So you see from there that wherever we're gonna bless, we're gonna do al peroteha. Why is that? Because it's talking about Israeli fruits, produce, right? So therefore, that's what you need to bless. It doesn't matter where you're eating it. It could be in London, same thing. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So that's Yud. That is Yud. Yeah, so we gotta do one more Beit Yosef here because we already saw the Shulchan Aruch for this one. Okay, let's try the Beit Yosef here. And yeah, so I guess we'll do this one and see if we have more time, but we'll try to do this one at least. Okay, so now we're getting to the wine. So it says in Yud Aleph, the Tur, the al hayayin chotmin al aretz ve'al periya gefen. Right? So it says when it comes to wine, this is what we seal, right? On the land and on the fruits of the vine. And not like the ones who say ala gefen on the vine and on the fruits of the vine. By the way, that's what we do. We do it like that. So whatever the two rejected, right, we accepted. So anyway, let's see what it says in Beit Yosef. So chen katvu Rabbi Yonah. That's what it says Rabbi Yonah. Ve'arosh and the Rosh also. V'natan Rabbi Yonah tam ledavar. So he gives a reason for this. Tikimo shebechatimat birkat binet dagan. Just like when it comes to the sealing of the blessing of the types of grains, perot and fruits. Shivat minim are 7 species. Maskir haaretz. You also mentioned the land of Israel. Who adin bayayin. Same thing also happens with the on the wine, ואין ביניהם שינוי, there's no difference between them, אלא שביין, כשמזכיר הפרי, but it says when it comes to wine, when he mentions the fruit, צריך להזכיר בשם פרטי אילן שבו. You have to mention the type of fruit, the type of tree that it is. שבו גדלו את הענבים, that's where the grapes grew there. ובשאר מינים, when it comes to other species, he says, די שיאמר פירות, it's good enough to just to say פירות, fruits. אבל הארץ לעולם עומדת, but he says the land stands forever, וכולן יש לו להזכיר בחתימת על הארץ וכן דת הרעבד. And it says in all of them, they should mention the, when you seal it, the land, al aretz, v'chin dat rabad. Rabad also says like that. Lachatom bebirkat yain, to seal with the blessing of the wine, al aretz ve'el pri gefen, like this, right, on the land and on the fruits of the vine. We don't do like that, as we said. We do al gefen ve'el pri gefen, on the vine and on the fruits of the vine. Aval Rambam perek chet chotem gam bebirkat hayain al aretz ve'el pri. So the Rambam doesn't do like that, right? He says no. Even for wine, he says we do on the land and on the fruits. He calls it fruits. Tosfot also seems to agree with that. וכן כתב סמ"ג, it's also סמ"ג, בשם רבנו יצחק, like Rabbi יצחק. בטעם מחלוקת זו, so it says, what's the reason for this מחלוקת? משום דבגמרא אמרינן, because we say in Gemara, דאפרא חתים על הארץ ועל הפירות. That regarding fruits, he seals, right, on the land, on the fruits. And the blessing of the wine was not mentioned there. Harambam v'Rabbeinu Yitzchak Savre. So these two rabbis hold that Bechlar Birkat HaPirot it's included in the blessing of the fruits. Mipnei kach lo izkiru, and this way they didn't mention it. Even though the beginning of the final blessings, matchil ala gefen ve'al pri gefen, he starts with this right type of answer. כל מקום בחתימת הברכה, משמע דהו כמו חתימת ברכה דפירות היא. So he says, nevertheless, when it comes to the sealing of the blessing, they understand it like this: the kamosh chatimat brachat berkatot peroti, just like in the seal, you have the blessing of the fruits. Rabbeinu Yonah, so yeah, it's like the sealing of the fruits. That's what he's saying. Rabbeinu Yonah ve'aravad ve'arosh, these three rabbis, sabre de lo utzrechu leazkirav mishum de birkat hamazon dayan. So it says, according to them, you don't have to. They didn't need to mention this halacha, because from the first blessing of the wine, that we learn from there that it's always on the wine. He doesn't mention the general name, rather it's the specific name. So therefore it implies when it comes to the final blessing, he begins with Ala Gefen, and that's the beginning. The Chotam al Aretz ve'al Priya, it's Hagefen, and the seal is on the land and on the vine, on the fruit of the vine. Rashba agrees with that. Katab dechen amadavar, and he says that's the way people do. Wow. Okay, well let's see in the Shulchan Aruch, because it seems to go against our custom with the conclusion here. So let's see what we got. So it says like this, right? The Birkat Men Gimel So it says the blessing of the three, right? Three blessings, which is of the ayin of the wine. Right? Ala gifen ve'al pri gifen. Eno chotem ala gifen ve'al pri gifen. He says you don't seal it like that. Rather, you should seal it like this, right? Al haaretz ve'al pri gifen, or al haaretz ve'al perot. One option is on the land and all the fruits of the vine. The other one is just say on the land and all on the fruits of, meaning the land, the fruits of the land. But the truth is, our custom is not like this. We do ala giffen v'al pi giffen. That's what we do. Let's see if he mentions this in the Mishnah Berurah. All right, so I guess we'll stop here. It's already 9:30. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue next time. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Leila Tov, Chazak u'Baruch. We'll see you tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, and I think we'll wrap up this chapter. B'lei neder. All the best. God bless.
Thank
Thank
you, Rabbi.
you.
Bye.